Like so much else these days, with all the political drama in Washington, D.C., this went unnoticed. Late last week, the United Nations actually put forth the idea of arming and defending the Palestinian terrorists. Let's talk about this with Daniel Pipes, American historian, writer, and commentator. He's also the president of the Middle East Forum. Daniel, thank you for joining us. Late last week, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, put forth the notion of arming the Gaza Palestinians. He called them victims in need of armed security. What's going on?
It's actually not as bad as it looks. There was a Security Council resolution that the U.S. vetoed, so it went to the General Assembly where it passed 120 in favor. And what it did is it said, hey, Secretary General, give us ideas on how to protect the Palestinians from Israel. And so Guterres, who's actually not too bad on this issue, had no choice but to come up with some solutions, some ideas. He didn't say to arm the Palestinians. He gave them four alternatives. One is to put in UN peacekeeping troops. Second is UN civilians. Third is more aid to the Palestinians. And fourth was more reporting by UN people. But the point is that on the first two especially, you need a Security Council agreement, which means that the United States can veto them. So in effect, he offered, maybe you want more money, maybe more people from the UN to keep an eye on things, but in fact, nothing's going to come of it. So he had to do what he had to do, but he made sure that it was pretty insignificant. So I think this is going to die. I think it has real importance.
Daniel, what is his and really the United Nations posture right now when it comes to the ongoing conflict between the Palestinians and Israel? Have you seen any shift in the posture of the United Nations?
But the thing to understand about the General Assembly is that there are major voting blocks. So I will vote for you on things that don't concern me if you vote for me on things that don't concern you. So the Arab Muslim bloc is some 57 countries. And so, yeah, that's valuable. Out of 193 countries, 57 is a big bloc. So they get to go around and say, vote for us, we'll vote for you. And so they get these huge numbers. It doesn't really reflect anything larger, but it does reflect the voting patterns of the United Nations. Now, as you suggested, since Donald Trump came to office and Nikki Haley came to Turtle Bay, there's been something of a change. Not huge, but incremental and positive.
And how has that been received? Overall, the very strong position that President Trump and Nikki Haley have taken, the very strong pro-Israel position, generally, how has that been received in the United Nations?
I think it's somewhat popular because, you know, this voting block thing doesn't really appeal to people. You know, I've got to vote for your craziness because we need your vote for our sanity. You know, people don't care for this that much. So getting the U.S. more engaged and putting pressure on countries not to do this is not entirely unpopular. And there have been some positive results, as I said.
What's behind, Daniel, what's behind the increased attacks that have been coming from Gaza, coming from the Palestinians in Gaza? It just strikes me that over the course of the last few months, we have seen sort of a ratcheting up of attacks and infiltration of the Israeli border.
I think the basic presumption is that Hamas, the rulers of Gaza, believe that if they create warfare, conflict with Israel, this will overall be to their benefit. Now, they'll lose on the ground. They'll get smashed. They'll get killed. Things will get destroyed. But in a larger sense, in the UN sense, in the European sense, in the Russian and Chinese sense, in the Arab and Muslim sense, they will gain. Their stature will go up. They'll get money. They'll get prestige. They'll get more control over Gaza. So it's not an easy decision for them to make because they do get smashed. They are militarily definitely inferior, but politically they gain.
So in a sense, Daniel, they are incentivized to cause trouble, to force Israel to respond with force, thereby on the world stage making Israel look like the bad guy?
Exactly. And then resolutions such as the one we started discussing get passed, and Israel is the bad guy. Yeah. Now, how important is that?
So,
I'm not so sure. I mean,
no, go ahead.
I don't think this resolution is going anywhere, but it certainly creates a bad environment politically, diplomatically for Israel.
This notion, though, of the Gaza Palestinians as victims, the UN Secretary General emphasized that. Is that new, or has that really been how they've always viewed the Palestinians?
It's been a good long while, yes. As Ambassador Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador in the United Nations, put it, the United Nations should be protecting the Palestinians of Gaza. There's nothing unusual about that when it comes to the Middle East. Things are often upside down.
So, Daniel, what can the United States do to be helpful to end this cycle of the Palestinians causing trouble, forcing Israel to respond? What role can the United States play right now?
Well, I've been advocating for some time what I call Israel victory. The American president, whoever he might be, should tell the Israeli prime minister, whoever he might be, hey, Israel, win your war. Convince the Palestinians that the gig is up, they lost, and that will not only be beneficial to you, Israel, that you don't have to be attacked every so often, but it'll also be even more beneficial to Palestinians who will finally extricate themselves from the oppression and backwardness in which they live under Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, and they can start to build their own polity, economy, society, culture. So Israel victory is the way forward. Americans advocate to Israelis, win your war. That's the only, if you look at history, that's the way wars end. It's not through mediation and compromise, it's through one side giving up.
Last question, Daniel. Looking back now, moving our embassy to Jerusalem, that's not really responsible for any of this new violence, is it?
No, it's not a significant factor. Now, the interesting thing is that there are indications to suggest that move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem was part of a larger scheme on Trump's part. He now plans to give the Palestinians something. He said as much just a couple of days ago. He didn't say what, but it looks like he's got something major to give them. I suspect it's recognition of Palestine with Jerusalem as its capital. So the move of the American Embassy in Israel may simply be the first of two steps.
Daniel Pipes, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Good to talk to you.
How come rich socialists don't just voluntarily give their money to government? We'll talk about that next.